Good evening, Park Church. So thankful for you to take a few moments of your evening and join me for the Midweek Pastor's Moment. I'm joined today by some special guests, no strangers to our Park Church family. Pastor Colin and Susie are here. They recently got back from their trip to Zimbabwe, and you might remember that it was just a few months ago that we just commissioned them into this next season of their life. And so I invited them to come and just share a little about their experience and their trip to bring you in because we're family, wanted you to know how our family was doing. So welcome.
Hey, it's great to be here. And thank you for inviting us to come and share today. It really means a lot to us.
Yeah, it's good to have you guys back. So tell us about the trip.
Well, if I had a word to describe 2022, the word would be reunion. And sometimes when you haven't seen people in decades, you're wondering how they've been doing. And it was just a wonderful treat and surprised to see people doing so well. And we were reunited with old friends that we hadn't seen in decades, and just enjoyed it. Able to take part and celebrate in their 15th anniversary.
Yeah, it wasn't a short trip because you don't go all the way across the ocean just for a few nights. So you guys just got back last Friday, but how long were you gone for?
We were gone just a couple of days short of a month, really. So, but it went really quickly. It was so wonderful just being back in Zimbabwe and seeing, the church alive, and the country is going through very, very difficult, perilous times, but the church is alive, and our friends' ministry is flourishing.
Right, and that's primarily the reason all of this timing worked out at Park Church, because it was a huge anniversary in the life of the church, the 15th anniversary, and Pastor Colin was invited to come and be a main speaker for a great celebration. So why don't you tell them about the history and fill us in about the conference as it was?
Well, the church is called Celebration Church, and it was their 15th anniversary. Let me begin with a little bit of a story, because I think you've heard me say this before. I believe I coined it because it's just poor English, but relationships are never for nothing. And in 1991, when we were just newly in Zimbabwe, we were filling in the city of Kwekwe for 6 months. And one Wednesday morning, there was a knock on the door. And this young couple who were on their honeymoon were there at the door. And Dixon was showing his new wife, Chippo, where he had gone to church while he was attending school in Kwekwe. But now he was living in Bulawayo, city of 1 million, where we would be moving just a few months later. And so we did, in January 92, started City Pentecostal Assembly. And lo and behold, Dixon and Chippo became very, very important people in our church. He was a lecturer at the Polytech College. He had 9 lecturers under him in the machining department, and had a very good job. But while he journeyed with us, he led worship right from the beginning, and he was one of our board members, and then he became our youth pastor, and then he went to Bible college back and forth to Harare, 5 hours through the week and home on weekends. And he just grew in the Lord and in ministry, and in June of 98, we were able to just go through the same process that we did with you. We had raised him up from assistant to associate, and we passed the baton to him as the lead pastor who took over. So he pastored City Pentecostal Assembly for 10 years and did a great job. And then he left and he started another church called Celebration Church in Bulawayo. Well, we were there celebrating 15 years of the anniversary. The ministry has flourished. They've planted 21 other churches in a scope of about 500 kilometers in a number of different places. The churches are alive. Many of them have pastors. Many of them have buildings. And many of them came together for this conference. There were at least 800 that were at the conference where we spoke and we celebrated 15 years. And it was just amazing, really, Joe, and I think this somehow has a special meaning for you also, but to see Dixon all of these years later, 31 years later from when we met him, and the ministry that him and Chippo have far, far exceeded what I have ever done in my life. And so the relationship that began was God ordained, and God was in it all along. So to be invited back into it, just to celebrate and to be there with them, was really, really great.
Yeah, it's just an incredible kingdom work in God's grand plan for your lives and for the church there, for Dixon, and all that God wanted to do through him. And now they've planted, how many churches have come out of this?
There's now 22 altogether, including the main church.
22 churches from one church, one assembly, sending out pastors, raising up leaders, and not just ministering to one city, even a big city, but many, many rural areas and groups of people and communities, all affected out of one assembly through the raising up of leaders. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and there are 4 different types or settings, really. There are the city churches, and there are the township churches, which are the high-density suburbs that surround the city. And there are growth point churches, and there are rural churches, almost in the middle of nowhere. And so they're impacting Matabeleland at all levels. But I think their main church, the city church, has been sending out people again and again, and being involved in seeing churches planted. And of course, we talk in a minute, I guess, about this, but they have a huge humanitarian emphasis that has really helped them to have opportunities to share the gospel.
Yeah, because many people probably don't know or aren't aware of what the socioeconomic status is of most people living in Zimbabwe. Few people may have had a chance to be there or visit areas of Africa. Some of you are from there, but why don't you just give us like a snapshot of like what the living conditions are for most people?
Yeah, so Zimbabwe, well, officially they're 14 million, but they're probably not. Quite a few people have left the country because the unemployment rate is 95%. And so what we saw doesn't jive with that. It doesn't make sense that people can live and carry on day to day at a meager level when there's no employment. But in actual fact, mostly all of them have relatives that left the country 2, 3, 5, 8 years ago and are now living and working in Great Britain or in America, some in Canada, Australia, South Africa, and they send back. It's very much a part of African culture, high context culture, to care for your family. So if your brother's not working, you would pay for your brother's kids' school fees or send money for food. So people really, I believe, for the most part, are existing on gifts that come monthly for them to keep them alive. So the country in some ways is in a very serious condition, where there are people who don't have relatives out of the country, and those would probably be reflected more in the rural areas. There's extreme poverty, and there is hunger, and children not getting fed, fainting at school. There's been a real cry and a great response in Zimbabwe from a number of NGOs to help provide for care and food, feeding.
Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things that is sort of connecting, at this moment when you're coming back and we're talking about feeding programs for children, and that's one of the things that they do, making sure these kids have some high nutritional food to have while they're at school, because you can't learn when you're starving. And so extreme that children are fainting. And that's where Erdo and Pentecostal assemblies come alongside of pastors on the ground like Dixon and resource them to meet some of the needs, and there's this partnership that's happening.
Yeah, so ERDO is Emergency Relief and Development Overseas. It's our humanitarian relief and development NGO, but it's us. And ERDO, PAOC, have two partners in Zimbabwe. One is the Pentecostal Assemblies of Zimbabwe, our sister organization, and the other is Celebration Church. And if I can focus on Celebration Church just for a moment, so Dixon and Chipo, Dixon pastors and oversees all of the churches, but Chipo, she studied and got an MBA in management of NGOs, I guess, really, and she leads childcare ministry. So ERDO partners with childcare ministry in Zimbabwe to help feed children. Now she has a couple of other partners in America, but what is happening is beyond my ability to get my head around it. They are feeding 81,000 children 5 days a week, one meal. So they go to the schools, there's a large crew of people in various locations, and they prepare a maize meal with soya and nutrients added porridge, which these children get every day at 10 o'clock at school. And so when they started into this feeding program, schools opened up, the city council opened up and provided land for them, and helped them actually to get into the schools and start projects that were really bringing huge blessing to the people. So we partner with ERDO, and with ERDO we partner with Childcare Plus, and so we're a part of seeing 81,000 children fed every day. And it's really amazing. So she oversees it, and she has a number of directors at many of the projects, and all of the directors have volunteers that do all the preparing and serving of food. Mm-hmm. So it's done on a very kind of a lean or shoestring budget, but the money all goes, almost all of it, to feeding children, to providing food.
Yeah.
And school fees, and medical care. So because medicine and going to the doctor now, if there's an incident, it's become very expensive. Most children couldn't afford it. Their families couldn't afford to care for them. So they have child sponsorship as well. So there's the provision of school fees, uniforms, and medical care in addition to going to school. And then there are the schools where they only feed. So there's so much happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the incredible thing to me is here we are sitting here thousands of miles away, and yet we have this less than you've probably heard that, 6 degrees of separation, from any celebrity or person. But here we have this just 2 steps where you guys are there, and it's leaders that you've raised up that are feeding 81,000 kids. You've observed it, you've seen it, you've heard their hearts, and it's something that we can not only be involved with through prayer, but we can get involved with directly. And Park Church is something that you can get involved with and make an incredible difference, because right now ERDO has a 5-to-1 matching partnership for gifts. 5-to-1. Every loony doesn't get you much. $5 gets you a lot farther. And so all money given to ERDO going to Zimbabwe is being matched 5-to-1. And so it's an incredible opportunity for you to make a difference and to support people on the ground. The Pastor Colin and them are there. They know it's through our Pentecostal assemblies, through ERDO. It's very it's validated. It's stamped. It's, like you said, shoestring budget. It's not a lot going to administrations and fees. It's going to feed children. And so I challenge you to consider making a contribution that, again, is going to be multiplied 5 times over towards feeding children in Zimbabwe. And you can continue to do more than that. I want to ask Pastor Colin, how can we continue to pray for Dixon, pray for salvation, pray for you guys as well?
Yeah, so much. Let me go back to the giving again for a moment. I know that Canadians generally are fairly generous, and Christians truly are. These people, we know them. They're our people, Dixon and Chipo Changara. They are credentialed through us, people of the highest integrity and credibility. There's a lot of organizations that people give to, but once you've given, there's not always the kind of relationship and paper trail and follow through, or even the same percentage that gets to the actual need. But in this case, it's a completed relationship, fully transparent, reporting back, the highest level integrity. So this is really, if you were an investor, you would say this is really a prime investment. It really can reap. And in addition to the feeding, I should also mention that Chipo does women's empowerment projects. So on one property, 11 acres in Bulawayo that the city gave them, she has started vegetable growing, fish ponds, banana plantation, all for the empowerment, helping women to produce different vegetables to sell them, to make a bit of a living at that. And in another property, they have a sewing factory that makes school uniforms, because all kids in Zimbabwe, they wear school uniforms. So they make school uniforms, and they earn money for those women, and also they provide uniforms for all of the sponsored children through Child Care Plus. So there's so much that can be done, and I really am very grateful just to be able to share this through you today, Pastor Joe. And I know that they can get in touch with you, and we certainly can make a big difference. At 5-1, we can make a huge difference in Zimbabwe. So thank you for considering that.
Yeah, no, it's just our joy to have you. We're a family church, and even when our family kind of live close or go far, like, we just want to keep you guys close, and you're always forever in our hearts and in our minds. And so I'm sure some people would love to hear the deeper side of the story and about more of your trip. And so can people give you a ring you up? Can they ring the doorbell for coffee or
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Bring the donuts even.
Yeah.
No, just joking. We would love to chat with any of you about that. I know that that the Park Church is a missions church. People here have passion for the lost. They care about what's happening in the world. And again and again and again, you have dug deeply and given generously to missions, to projects, and to humanitarian needs. So we'd be happy to talk with any of you who would like to hear more. In addition, and in closing, we also had an opportunity to do a little traveling up to Victoria Falls and visit where, a place where was very special to us over the years. And we went on the safari in Botswana. And we also were able to visit in the eastern corner, the Eastern Highlands tea plantations, which was very interesting. And a number of churches. So all in all, it was fantastic. And thank you once again for your generosity in providing those tickets for us. It was a huge gift and much appreciated.
Two-way ticket, not a one-way.
Yeah, two-way.
Yeah, if you gave us one-way tickets, we might still be there.
Yeah. Well, it was a completely full trip, and very special timing. So no, we're just so glad to be able to have you guys in shortly after you reacclimatize. I didn't want to hit you up too early to come in, but it's really good to see you guys.
Thank you.
So sit tight. Park Church, just a few quick things before we let you go for the evening. Don't want to forget to announce that our AGM is this coming Sunday at 6 p.m. We would love to see you all there, especially you members. We expect to see you there. And you can come early and enjoy some treats at 5:30, and the meeting will begin promptly at 6 p.m. And then later next week, ladies, you're doing a prayer walk on Wednesday. They're going to go around and pray for the schools in Sherwood Park. So you're just going to meet here at the church, and then you're going to head out in different groups and really pray for our students and our schools and our teachers. Very important to us. We want to be known as a house of prayer, and so we're going to go out and pray in our community. Also, at the end of the month, October the 30th, is our first worship summit. We have special guests coming, Daniel and Caitlin at Aroma, to lead us in a time of worship. It's going to be 1 hour of just pressing into God's presence, seeking Him in worship. As I said on Sunday, it's going to be tying our hearts to His. We want our heartbeat and God's heartbeat to be one. And so we're going to do that on the 30th, and we really hope to see you there. We're going to be continuing in our worship series this coming Sunday. Pastor Jonathan speaking. You won't want to miss it. And lastly, just want to give a pitch to you parents. Our youth retreat happening at the end of the month. Get your students signed up for youth retreat. These are the pivotal moments in the life of your young person. Time away to really press into God's presence together. Pastor Carter has a word on his heart to give your students. And so don't let there be an obstacle for them being there. Register online, and if finances are a concern, we'd love to talk to you about that. And there are some generous people, as we've said in our church, that really want to make sure your student gets there. So you'll find all that information in our email and on our website, and we just appreciate you all so much. So from the three of us, we're really glad that you spent this time with us, Park Church, and we'll see you again real soon.